Mike felt a shiver run down his spine as he watched the woman collapse on the pavement, pushed away by his fiancée, Jenny. But it wasn't just the fall that haunted him. It was the look in her eyes, a look that stirred a long-buried memory from his painful past. And when the woman's friend called her by a name he hadn't heard in years, Mike felt this moment would change everything.
Hi, this is True Tales Authentic Emotions. I'm Emma Blake, ready to share another remarkable story with you. Enjoy.
The day had been long, and the city's relentless pace had worn on Mike's nerves. As he walked down the crowded sidewalk, hand in hand with Jenny, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. It was then that they came across a frail woman, her face obscured by a mess of tangled hair, sitting on the cold pavement with a small cup in front of her. She looked up at them, her deep green eyes filled with a haunting mix of desperation and familiarity. Mike's steps faltered, and a strange chill ran down his spine. He felt as if he knew her from somewhere, but before he could process the thought, Jenny stepped forward, disgust flickering across her perfect features. "Get away from us," Jenny spat, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. She pushed the woman with such force that the frail figure tumbled backward, collapsing onto the hard pavement. Mike watched in shock as the woman fell, but what struck him more was the way she looked at him as she went down. It wasn't just pain or fear in her eyes. There was something deeper, something that gripped his heart with an icy hand. Mike stood frozen, his mind racing. The memory of those eyes, so familiar, so filled with a sorrow he couldn't place, stirred something deep within him. It was as if he had seen them before, in another life, or perhaps in a long-buried memory from his childhood. He wanted to move, to help her, to understand what was happening, but his feet were glued to the ground. The world around him seemed to blur, all sounds fading except for the echo of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. "Amanda, get up. Don't let them treat you like this," a voice suddenly rang out, cutting through the fog in Mike's mind. He turned toward the source and saw another woman, rough-looking figure who had clearly seen her share of hardship, rushing to help the fallen woman. But it was the name that had sent shockwaves through him. Amanda. The name echoed in his head, triggering a flood of memories, of a little girl lost in the chaos of a tragic night. The realization hit Mike like a freight train. This wasn't just any woman lying on the pavement. This was his sister, the sister he had thought was lost forever. His breath caught in his throat, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop as the full weight of the revelation settled in. He knew that nothing would ever be the same after this moment, and he had no idea how to even begin to make things right. Mike was just a boy, maybe 6 or 7, when he first felt the weight of responsibility for his little sister, Amanda. She was only a toddler then, barely able to speak in full sentences, but her big green eyes followed him everywhere. Their bond was unbreakable, forged in the safety of their family's warm, loving home. Mike would spend hours playing with Amanda, her laughter filling the house like sunshine. Those were the days when everything seemed perfect, when the future was bright and full of promise. But all that changed one fateful night. The fire started in the middle of the night. Mike woke to the sound of crackling wood and the smell of smoke thick in the air. Panic gripped his heart as he realized their house was burning. He could hear his mother's frantic voice, trying to gather everyone to safety, but the flames were already too strong. Amid the chaos, Mike clung to Amanda's small hand, his only thought to protect her. But as the heat intensified, his mother, with tears in her eyes, begged him to take Amanda and run, to save her no matter what. But the moment they burst through the front door, a beam collapsed, separating them. In the confusion and fear, Mike lost his grip on Amanda's hand. He turned back, screaming her name, but the flames swallowed her up in the chaos. That was the last time he saw his sister. The rest of that night was a blur. Firefighters, ambulances, and the realization that his parents were gone, along with Amanda. After the fire, Mike was taken in by his wealthy uncle, who provided everything material that a boy could want. But no amount of wealth could fill the void left by his lost family. The mansion he lived in was cold and empty, a far cry from the warmth of his childhood home. His uncle tried to comfort him with expensive toys and lavish trips, but nothing could bring back what he had lost. Amanda, the sister he had sworn to protect, was gone, and every day, the guilt gnawed at him, a constant reminder of the night everything changed. As Mike grew older, he channeled his grief and guilt into success. He became the man his uncle always wanted him to be, wealthy, powerful, respected. But beneath the surface, the boy who had lost everything still lingered, haunted by the memory of his sister. He wondered what had become of Amanda, whether she had somehow survived, but he never found the courage to search for her. It was easier to bury the past, to focus on the life he had built. Yet, deep down, he knew that part of him was missing, and no amount of success could ever make him whole again. Mike tried to shake off the unsettling feeling that had gripped him ever since the encounter on the street. He told himself it was nothing, just a strange coincidence. But as he sat at his desk, staring at the paperwork in front of him, his mind kept drifting back to that woman. There was something about her eyes, the way she looked at him, that stirred a memory deep within. It was as if a door had been unlocked, revealing a part of his past he had long buried. But he couldn't afford to be distracted now, not with so much at stake in his business. Jenny, however, was quick to dismiss the incident. She rolled her eyes when Mike brought it up, brushing off his concerns with a wave of her hand. "You're overthinking it," she said, her tone dripping with impatience. "She's just a homeless woman, Mike. Let's not waste time on this." Jenny's words were sharp, her focus solely on their upcoming social events and the image they needed to maintain. To her, the encounter was nothing more than an inconvenience, something to be forgotten as quickly as possible. But for Mike, forgetting wasn't so easy. He threw himself into his work, trying to drown out the thoughts that kept creeping into his mind. Yet, every time he paused, the memories surfaced, fragments of a childhood long past, of a time when life was simpler, before everything fell apart. The harder he tried to focus on the present, the more the past seemed to haunt him. He could see Amanda's face, feel the weight of the guilt he carried, and no matter how much he tried to push it aside, it lingered, refusing to be ignored. As the days passed, Mike became increasingly restless. He would catch himself staring out the window, lost in thought, the paperwork on his desk untouched. The city outside seemed distant, almost foreign, as if he were living in a different world from everyone else. The sense of familiarity he felt that day grew stronger, gnawing at him. He knew he had to do something, anything, to shake off this feeling. But the more he resisted, the more it consumed him. The life he had built, the success he had achieved, suddenly felt hollow, overshadowed by the ghost of a memory he couldn't escape. The name Amanda echoed in Mike's mind, pulling at the strings of memories long buried. He hadn't thought about his sister in years, but hearing that name from the homeless woman's friend stirred something deep within him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a coincidence. The familiar sensation gnawed at him, growing stronger with each passing moment. Amanda, his sister, the one he lost so many years ago. Could it really be her? The thought seemed impossible, but the unease it brought refused to leave him. As the days passed, the memories of his childhood began to resurface. He remembered the bond they shared, the way they looked out for each other before everything went wrong. The name Amanda played over and over in his head, along with the image of the woman's face. He couldn't ignore the nagging thought that perhaps, just perhaps, he had found her after all this time. Determined to find out the truth, Mike began to dig into his past, searching for any trace of his sister. Late at night, he sat in front of his computer, scrolling through old records, news articles, and anything that might give him a clue. The more he searched, the more the pieces began to come together, but nothing was clear enough to confirm his suspicions. Yet, the feeling of familiarity grew stronger, driving him to continue his quest. Mike's search for Amanda was becoming more challenging than he had anticipated. The information he found was sparse, and many of the leads turned out to be dead ends. He spent hours digging through old records, calling different agencies, and even visiting places that might hold answers, but each effort only led to more questions. His frustration grew with each passing day, as he realized that finding Amanda was not going to be as straightforward as he had hoped. The memories of their childhood were clear, but the trail she left behind had faded with time, making his task feel almost impossible. The stress of the search began to take a toll on Mike, and his frustration started to seep into his daily life. He became increasingly irritable, unable to focus on anything else. His thoughts were consumed by the idea of finding Amanda, and he struggled to maintain his usual composure. Jenny, who had initially been supportive, began to lose patience. She noticed how distant Mike had become, his obsession with the search taking precedence over everything else. Conversations between them grew tense, with Jenny expressing her concern that Mike was losing himself in a hopeless quest. Her irritation was palpable, and it only added to Mike's growing sense of desperation. He felt torn between the need to find his sister and the strain it was putting on his relationship. Jenny's patience was wearing thin. She had supported Mike through many challenges, but this obsession with the homeless woman was different. She couldn't understand why he was so fixated on someone who, in her eyes, was just a random stranger. Jenny approached Mike, her voice firm but laced with concern. She urged him to let go of this distraction, to focus on their future together, and to stop wasting time on a pursuit that seemed hopeless. She reminded him of their plans, their goals, and how this new obsession was pulling them further apart. Her words were meant to bring him back to reality, to shake him out of what she saw as a growing delusion. Mike found himself at a crossroads, torn between the instinct that drove him to find out more about Amanda and the logical argument Jenny presented. He knew she was right in many ways. They did have a future to plan, and his time and energy were being consumed by something that might lead nowhere. But every time he thought of stopping, that strange sense of familiarity clawed at him, refusing to let go. The tension between them grew, each conversation about the issue escalating into an argument. Mike felt the strain on their relationship intensifying, yet he couldn't bring himself to ignore the gnawing feeling inside. The dilemma was tearing him apart, pushing him to question what was more important, the woman he loved or the truth he felt compelled to uncover. Mike's heart sank when he learned that Amanda and her homeless friend had left the city. The news came from a street vendor who often saw them around. He mentioned that they had packed up what little they had and disappeared, likely moving on to another town in search of something better. Mike's sense of desperation grew as the realization hit him. His chance to reconnect with Amanda was slipping through his fingers. The thought of her being out there, alone and unreachable, gnawed at him, fueling his urgency to find her. It was as if the universe was playing a cruel trick on him, offering a glimpse of hope only to snatch it away just as he was getting close. Jenny saw this as an opportunity to finally pull Mike away from his obsession. She approached him with a mixture of concern and frustration, trying to reason with him once more. She argued that this was a sign, a clear indication that he needed to let go and focus on their life together. Jenny's words were sharp, her patience having worn thin. She emphasized the futility of chasing someone who didn't want to be found, and how his fixation was starting to hurt their relationship. Mike, however, was caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Part of him knew Jenny was right, but the other part couldn't shake the feeling that he was abandoning something important, something that might define his future if only he could grasp it. Mike couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of guilt that gnawed at him after learning Amanda had disappeared. His mind raced back to the moment when he first saw her, the recognition that flickered in her eyes, and the missed opportunity to reach out. The weight of his inaction pressed heavily on him, making him question every decision he had made since. How could he have let her slip away so easily? The echoes of his past mistakes reverberated in his mind, reminding him of other times he had let people down, other chances he had missed. The guilt was suffocating, and he found himself struggling to breathe under its pressure. As these thoughts consumed him, Mike began to reflect on his relationship with Jenny. He had always thought their bond was strong, built on mutual respect and shared goals. But now, doubt crept in. Jenny's insistence that he abandon his search for Amanda felt like a betrayal, an erosion of the support he had once counted on. Was he wrong to have put so much trust in her? Or was she right, and he was the one who had lost perspective? The uncertainty gnawed at him, leaving him feeling isolated and unsure of the path ahead. He realized that his guilt was not just about Amanda, but about the choices he had made in his life. Choices that now seemed to be unraveling everything he thought he knew. Just as Mike was beginning to lose hope, an old acquaintance unexpectedly reached out to him. The man mentioned, almost in passing, that he had seen someone who looked just like Amanda in a small town a few hours away. This was the first real lead Mike had received in weeks, and it reignited a spark of hope within him. His mind raced with the possibilities. The thought that Amanda might be within reach was both thrilling and terrifying. Could this be the opportunity he had been praying for, or was it just another dead end? Despite the uncertainty, Mike knew he couldn't let this chance slip away. When Mike shared the news with Jenny, he was met with resistance. She tried to convince him that it was a wild goose chase, a distraction that would only pull him further away from their life together. Her words were laced with frustration, as though she were tired of competing with the ghost of his past. But for Mike, this wasn't just about the past. It was about righting a wrong, about finding closure for the pain that had haunted him for so long. He could feel the tension mounting between them, but this time, he wasn't going to let anything or anyone stop him. The decision was made. He would follow the lead, no matter the cost. With the new lead in hand, Mike wasted no time in organizing a trip to the town where Amanda had been spotted. His heart raced with anticipation, his mind consumed with thoughts of what he might find there. This was the closest he had come to finding her in years, and he wasn't about to let the opportunity slip away. The car was packed and ready, filled with maps, notes, and everything he thought might help in the search. Mike felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination that had been missing for so long. This time, he told himself he wouldn't return without her. Jenny, sensing the growing distance between them, reluctantly agreed to accompany Mike on the trip. Her reasons, however, were far from supportive. While Mike was focused on finding his sister, Jenny had her own agenda, one that involved keeping Mike tethered to their life together, away from the shadows of his past. As they drove through the winding roads toward the town, the air between them was thick with unspoken tension. Mike's excitement grew with every mile, but Jenny's thoughts were clouded with doubt and a fear of what might happen if they truly found Amanda. She hid her concerns well, but her intentions were anything but pure. Upon arriving in the small town where Amanda was last seen, Mike's heart sank as he learned the devastating news. She had disappeared again. The townsfolk, sympathetic but weary, told him she had been there, but only for a brief time before vanishing without a trace. The sense of hope that had propelled him forward now threatened to collapse under the weight of this new setback. Mike's mind raced as he tried to piece together where she could have gone, his frustration growing with each passing moment. He couldn't believe that after coming so close, Amanda was still out of reach. Jenny, sensing the strain in Mike, seized the moment to push him toward giving up. She argued that they had done all they could, that maybe it was time to move on, to accept that Amanda might not want to be found. Her words, however, only fueled Mike's resolve. The tension between them grew as Mike flatly refused to abandon his search. He knew the odds were against him, but the thought of stopping now, of failing his sister once more, was unbearable. He would keep looking, no matter how hopeless it seemed, because giving up on Amanda was simply not an option for him. Jenny's patience finally reaches its breaking point. She had watched Mike grow more obsessed with finding Amanda, his sister, to the point where he seemed blind to everything else, including their relationship. In a moment filled with tension and unspoken anger, Jenny tells Mike she can no longer continue the way things are. She breaks off the engagement, her voice trembling with frustration and sadness. Mike is left standing alone, the weight of her words sinking in, yet the realization that he has just lost Jenny does little to diminish his resolve. The pain of losing her is sharp, but it only solidifies his determination to find Amanda. As Jenny walks away, the loneliness that had been creeping up on Mike now floods him completely. The person who had been his anchor, his support through so many trials, was gone. And yet, even as he felt himself being swallowed by this newfound solitude, a deep, unyielding determination began to take root. Mike knew that he was now truly alone in his quest, with no one to turn to, but giving up was not an option. The search for Amanda was all that mattered, even if it meant sacrificing everything else in his life. Mike finds himself in a city that feels foreign, its unfamiliar streets and distant faces only adding to the growing sense of despair. Every lead he had been following has started to dry up, each one leading to another dead end. The bustling sounds of the city seem to mock his solitude, amplifying the isolation he feels with every step. His thoughts swirl with the possibility that he might never find Amanda, a fear that gnaws at him more deeply with each passing hour. The once vibrant hope he clung to now feels like a flickering light, slowly fading into darkness. As the reality of his situation sinks in, Mike begins to question everything: his choices, his determination, and whether he has been chasing a ghost all along. The weight of uncertainty presses down on him, making even the simplest tasks feel monumental. Despite the overwhelming sense of loss, a small part of him refuses to give up. He knows that this might be his last chance, but the city, with its cold indifference, seems to swallow every ounce of hope he has left. Mike is left standing at a crossroads, both literally and figuratively, unsure of where to turn next, as the fear of failure looms larger than ever. Mike's search takes an unexpected turn when he uncovers a crucial piece of information. He learns that Amanda and her homeless friend had been heading to seek help from a distant relative of the friend, someone who might hold the key to Amanda's disappearance. This revelation stirs a new sense of urgency in Mike, reigniting his determination to find her. However, the discovery also brings new challenges. The relative's exact location is unknown, and the trail is faint, buried under layers of secrecy and time. Mike's mind races as he tries to piece together the fragmented information, knowing that this could be his only lead. But it's like chasing a shadow in a city filled with them. As Mike digs deeper, he realizes that finding this relative will not be straightforward. The clues are sparse, and each one seems to lead to more questions rather than answers. The hope that this lead could bring him closer to Amanda is tempered by the frustrating reality that he's now working against the clock in an unfamiliar territory. Yet, even with these complications, Mike clings to this new thread of hope, driven by the belief that this relative might know something crucial. The stakes have never been higher, and every step feels like walking on thin ice. Knowing that one wrong move could shatter any chance of finding Amanda, Mike makes the difficult decision to embark on the journey to find the distant relative of Amanda's friend. The location is vague and the distance daunting, but he knows he has no other choice. Despite the overwhelming uncertainty and the persistent feeling of desperation, Mike steels himself for what lies ahead. He feels the weight of the unknown pressing down on him, but his resolve remains unshaken. The image of Amanda, lost and possibly alone, fuels his determination. He packs his few belongings, each item a reminder of the life he's put on hold, and sets off with a singular focus: to find this relative and uncover the truth. As Mike travels, the obstacles he faces are relentless. The journey is filled with moments of doubt and physical exhaustion. Every step seems to lead to a new challenge: difficult terrain, uncooperative weather, and the constant fear that this might all be in vain. But Mike refuses to give in. He pushes forward, driven by the thought that Amanda is out there, waiting to be found. The tension within him grows with each passing day, but so does his determination. Despite the mounting difficulties, Mike knows that turning back is not an option. He's come too far and sacrificed too much to give up now. As Mike continues his search, the people around him begin to lose faith. Friends who once supported him now start to distance themselves, their words tinged with doubt and skepticism. They no longer believe in his mission to find Amanda. To them, it's become a futile obsession. Mike can sense this shift. Their conversations grow shorter, their encouragement fades, and eventually, they stop reaching out altogether. The loneliness he feels is suffocating, amplifying the isolation that has slowly taken over his life. He begins to wonder if they are right, if he's chasing something that no longer exists. But even with these creeping doubts, he can't shake the feeling that he's on the right path. The growing isolation gnaws at Mike's confidence. He starts questioning his own judgment, replaying every decision, every clue, wondering if he's missed something vital. The fear that he's losing himself in a hopeless pursuit weighs heavily on his mind. Each day, the silence around him becomes more deafening, as if the world has turned its back on him. He finds himself in dark, solitary moments, struggling to hold on to the belief that his search for Amanda is not in vain. Yet, with every step, The fear that he's been wrong all along becomes harder to ignore. The journey has taken a toll on him, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. Mike sits alone, lost in thought, as the weight of everything he's been through presses down on him. He reflects on the choices he's made, the sacrifices, and the relentless pursuit of Amanda. Memories of their childhood flood back. Moments when he promised to protect her, to always be there. But now, the reality of possibly never finding her looms large. The idea of returning to a life without Amanda, without closure, is almost unbearable. He questions whether all his efforts have been in vain, whether he's been chasing a shadow, driven by guilt and the desperate need to make things right. As he contemplates the possibility of failure, Mike feels a deep sense of sorrow. Yet, amid the doubt, a spark of determination ignites. He knows that Amanda, wherever she may be, is more than just a sister. She represents the last thread of his past, a connection to who he was and who he wants to be. This realization strengthens his resolve. Even if the odds are against him, even if the world believes he's lost his way, Mike decides that he will continue. Not because he's certain of success, but because giving up now would mean losing himself completely. As Mike meticulously reviews the clues he has collected, a sense of clarity begins to form. He re-examines each detail with fresh eyes, realizing that the answers were always there, scattered throughout his journey. It's as if each clue was a piece of a larger puzzle, and now, the image is slowly coming into focus. A phrase from Amanda's childhood, a location she mentioned in passing, the symbol on an old postcard. All these fragments start to connect, forming a pattern that he had missed before. His heart races with the realization that he's been closer to the truth than he ever imagined. Despite this newfound understanding, Mike knows it's not enough. There's still a critical piece missing, something that will tie everything together. The tension mounts as he struggles to grasp the final connection. It's agonizing to be so close yet still uncertain. Every fiber of his being urges him to push forward, to uncover the final truth that has eluded him. He senses that the answer is just within reach, but the journey is not yet complete. With renewed determination, he braces himself for the final steps, knowing that the hardest part is still to come. The pressure mounts to an unbearable level as Mike realizes he's reached a breaking point. Every lead he's followed, every clue he's pieced together, now seems to dissolve into dead ends. The weight of the past and the enormity of his quest presses down on him, suffocating any remaining hope. He stands at the edge of despair, feeling the crushing realization that perhaps, despite all his efforts, this is a battle he cannot win. The vision of Amanda begins to blur, her face slipping away from his grasp, leaving him feeling more alone than ever. It's a moment of profound crisis, where all seems lost, and the possibility of failure looms large. As Mike faces the darkest hour of his journey, the isolation and despair consume him. The silence around him is deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos inside his mind. His thoughts spiral into hopelessness, each one darker than the last. He wonders if this search, which has consumed so much of his life, has been in vain. The memories of his sister, once a source of strength, now seem to mock him with the harsh truth that he may never find her. Desperation claws at him, dragging him down into a pit of despair where all light seems to fade away. In this bleak moment, the very core of his resolve begins to fracture, leaving him teetering on the brink of giving up. In the middle of the chaos, as Mike stands on the edge of despair, a faint memory resurfaces, bringing with it a glimmer of hope. He recalls a conversation he had with Amanda years ago, a small detail about a place she always felt safe, a place that had been a sanctuary for both of them in their childhood. It was an old park on the outskirts of the city, a forgotten corner where they used to play. The memory is hazy, but the connection is undeniable. Mike realizes that the park might be where Amanda has sought refuge. Mike drives to the park, his heart pounding with anticipation and fear. The park is just as they left it years ago, worn but still holding the echoes of their laughter. He begins searching frantically, scanning every corner, calling out Amanda's name. The tension mounts as he finds nothing but empty spaces, until finally, in the distance, he spots a figure sitting on a bench, head bowed, as if lost in thought. The figure is familiar, yet the years of separation make Mike hesitate. He steps closer, his breath catching in his throat as he realizes it's Amanda. The recognition is immediate, and the emotions that flood him are overwhelming. As they lock eyes, Amanda looks up, and for a moment, time seems to stand still. The weight of the years apart, the struggles, the heartache, all of it fades as they see each other for who they truly are. Siblings, survivors, and now, finally, reunited. The reunion is intense and deeply emotional. Amanda's face, lined with the pain of her experiences, softens as she recognizes Mike. Tears flow freely as they embrace, holding on to each other as if afraid to let go. It's a moment of profound relief and unspoken understanding, a resolution that ties together all the loose ends of their past. Mike and Amanda begin to rebuild their relationship with tentative steps, recognizing the fragility but also the strength that lies within their bond. They spend time together, reminiscing about their childhood and confronting the ghosts of their past. Each shared memory, each tear, and each laugh brings them closer, healing the wounds that time had inflicted. They begin to see each other not as the victims of their shared tragedy, but as survivors who have found their way back to one another. The initial awkwardness fades, replaced by a genuine connection and a renewed sense of family. The impact of Mike and Jenny's decisions is profound. Jenny, having made amends with Amanda, finds herself more at peace. Her relationship with Mike strengthens, as they both learn to be more open and honest. The trio forms a unique family unit, each person bringing something invaluable to the table. Amanda, no longer feeling like an outsider, starts to flourish. She finds stability and begins to plan for her future with a newfound confidence. The support and love from Mike and Jenny act as a solid foundation upon which she can build a new life. Mike's work life also sees a positive shift. He becomes more engaged and productive, and his colleagues notice the change. His boss, recognizing his renewed focus and dedication, offers him a promotion. It's a validation of his hard work and a sign that things are finally falling into place. Jenny, too, experiences growth in her career, finding that the personal peace she's achieved allows her to excel professionally. Together, they plan new ventures and adventures, dreaming of a future that, just a short while ago, seemed impossible. Their journey together is not without challenges. They face setbacks and moments of doubt, but each obstacle is met with a united front. The strength they've found in each other allows them to overcome difficulties, reinforcing their bond. They learn to communicate better, to support one another without judgment, and to celebrate each small victory along the way. Their home, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now resonates with laughter, warmth, and the promise of brighter days ahead. The story closes with a sense of fulfillment and forward-looking optimism. Mike, Amanda, and Jenny sit together, enjoying a quiet evening at home. They reflect on how far they've come and the possibilities that lie ahead. The past, once a source of pain, now serves as a reminder of their resilience and the power of love and forgiveness. They know that life will continue to throw challenges their way, but with each other, they are ready to face whatever comes next.